What I'm about to tell you, most people will never understand, not because it's complicated, but because it requires a level of awareness that almost no one is willing to reach. There is a stage, a hidden stage, where the empath stops being weak, stops being used, stops being broken, and becomes something dangerous. This is the Sophia Stage, and once you reach it, you don't go back. Awareness without attachment. This is the moment where everything changes, even if from the outside it looks like nothing happened at all, because the shift is internal, silent, invisible, but powerful enough to rewrite your entire life. There was a time when you felt everything, and I mean everything. Someone walked into the room with a heavy mood and suddenly your energy dropped. Someone spoke to you with a cold tone and your mind replayed it for hours. You didn't just hear people, you absorbed them. Their pain became your pain. Their chaos became your confusion. Their negativity found a home inside you even when you never invited it, and you thought that was your strength. You believed that being deeply emotional, deeply understanding, deeply available made you valuable. You believed that if you could just love harder, care more, give more of yourself, people would finally treat you right. But instead, you felt drained, confused, used. You kept asking yourself, why do I give so much and still feel empty? That question is the beginning of your transformation, because one day something shifts. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet realization that hits you after being hurt one too many times, after being misunderstood one too many times, after giving your energy to people who never deserved it. You start to notice patterns. You begin to see that it's not about one person hurting you. It's about a cycle you've been stuck in. The over-giving, the over-forgiving, the overthinking. The constant need to fix what you didn't break. And for the first time, you pause. You don't react the way you used to. Someone disrespects you, and instead of immediately trying to understand them, justify them, or fix the situation, you simply observe. You feel the emotion rise, but you don't let it control you. You watch it like an outsider watching a storm pass by. That's awareness. But here's where it becomes powerful. You don't attach yourself to it. You don't chase closure. You don't chase explanations. You don't chase people. You realize something that changes your entire identity. Not everything you feel is yours to carry. Think about that. For so long, you were carrying emotions that didn't belong to you. You were taking responsibility for other people's behavior, other people's wounds, other people's inability to love you properly. But in this stage, you let it go. You walk into a room and you can still feel the tension, but now it doesn't enter you. It stops at your awareness. You recognize it, but you don't absorb it. You understand it, but you don't become it. And that is freedom. There's a story of a person who spent years trying to fix everyone around them. Friends would come with their problems, their trauma, their chaos, and this person would listen for hours, give advice, offer support, sacrifice their own peace just to be there for others. But when they needed someone, no one showed up. At first, they blamed the world. They thought people are selfish, people don't care. But eventually, they realized something deeper. They had trained people to depend on them without ever requiring anything in return. They had given access to their energy without limits, without boundaries, without awareness, so they changed, not by becoming cold, not by losing their empathy, but by mastering it. The next time someone came with drama, they listened, but they didn't drown in it. They offered perspective, but they didn't take responsibility. They cared, but they didn't carry. And something incredible happened. People started respecting them differently. Because when you stop attaching yourself to every emotion, every problem, every person, you create a space where your energy is no longer easy to access. And people feel that. Awareness without attachment is not about becoming distant. It's about becoming disciplined. It's about realizing that just because you understand someone doesn't mean you have to tolerate them. It's about recognizing that just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act on it. It's about choosing your peace over your impulses. There will be moments where your old self tries to come back, moments where you feel the urge to over-explain, to over-give, to overextend yourself just to maintain a connection. But now, you catch it. You pause. And in that pause, you reclaim your power. You start asking yourself different questions. Instead of, why are they acting like this? You ask, why am I allowing this? Instead of, how can I fix this? You ask, is this even mine to fix? Instead of, what do they need from me? You ask, what do I need from myself? And those questions change everything, because now your empathy is no longer a doorway for people to walk all over you. It becomes a filter, a lens, a tool. You see clearly, you feel deeply, but you choose wisely. You no longer get lost in other people's storms because you finally learned how to stand in your own calm. And that calm, it's not weakness, it's control. It's power. It's the moment you realize that your emotions are not your enemy, but they are also not your master. You are. And once you reach that level, once you truly understand awareness without attachment, you don't just protect your energy, you elevate it. You walk through life with a quiet confidence. A presence that doesn't need to prove anything, doesn't need to chase anything, doesn't need to force anything, because you know, what is meant for you will meet you in your peace, not in your chaos. And anyone who requires you to lose yourself was never meant to stay. Boundaries become non-negotiable, and this is where most people misunderstand your transformation. Because from the outside, it looks like you've changed too much. People will say you've become distant. They'll say you're not as kind as before. They'll say you've become difficult to reach, harder to please, less available. But what they're really saying is this: they no longer have unlimited access to you. And that is exactly the point. There was a time when you said yes when your soul was screaming no. A time when you stayed in conversations that drained you, relationships that confused you, environments that slowly broke you. Not because you were weak, but because you cared. Because you didn't want to hurt anyone. Because you believed that being good meant being available all the time for everyone. So you gave your time, you gave your energy, you gave your attention, and little by little, you lost yourself. You started feeling exhausted without knowing why, frustrated without understanding the source, empty even when you were surrounded by people, because you were overextending yourself in places where you were not being valued. But then comes a moment, a defining moment, where something inside you refuses to continue like this. It could be after one deep betrayal, one moment of disrespect that hits deeper than usual, or maybe just the slow realization that no matter how much you give, it's never enough for the wrong people. And in that moment, something awakens. Not anger, not bitterness, clarity. You begin to see that your kindness was never the problem. Your lack of boundaries was. You begin to understand that every time you said yes to something that drained you, you were saying no to yourself. And that realization is uncomfortable because now you can't unsee it. So you start small. Someone asks for your time when you're already overwhelmed. And instead of automatically agreeing, you pause. You feel the discomfort rise, the fear of disappointing them, the fear of being misunderstood, but you choose honesty. You say, I can't right now. And it feels strange, almost wrong, but also freeing. Because for the first time, you chose yourself without guilt. And that's how it begins. Boundaries are not built in one big decision. They are built in small, consistent choices that slowly reshape your identity. You start leaving conversations that feel forced. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. You stop giving second chances to those who treated your first chance like it meant nothing. And here's where it gets difficult. Not everyone will accept this new version of you. Some people will test your boundaries. Some will try to push past them. Some will even try to make you feel guilty for having them. They'll say things like, you've changed. You're not the same person anymore. You used to care more. And for a moment, you might question yourself, but understand this clearly. Growth will always look like betrayal to those who benefited from your lack of limits. Let that sink in. The people who truly respect you will adjust. The people who only valued your availability will resist. And that resistance is your confirmation. There's a story of someone who spent years being the go-to person for everyone, the one who always picked up the phone, always showed up, always put others first. They were admired for their kindness, but behind closed doors, they were exhausted. One day they decided to change. They stopped answering every call. They stopped saying yes to every request. They stopped prioritizing everyone else over themselves. And suddenly, the reactions changed. Some people disappeared. Some became distant. Some even became upset. At first, it hurt. It felt like losing connections, losing relationships, losing people they once cared about. But then they realized something powerful. They weren't losing real connections. They were losing convenience-based relationships. And that realization changed everything. Because real respect doesn't disappear when you set a boundary. Real connection doesn't require you to sacrifice your peace. Real relationships don't demand access to you at the cost of yourself. So you keep going. You strengthen your boundaries, not with anger, not with aggression, but with calm certainty. You don't argue your limits. You live them. You don't beg people to understand. You allow them to choose whether they respect it or not. And if they don't, you remove access, not as punishment, but as protection. Because you finally understand that your energy is not unlimited. Your time is not replaceable. Your peace is not negotiable. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are standards that determine who is allowed to stay. And once you embrace this, Your life changes in ways you never expected. You feel lighter, clearer, more in control. You no longer feel obligated to entertain every conversation, attend every event, or maintain every connection. You become selective, intentional, focused, and that focus creates something powerful, self-respect, because every time you honor your boundary, you send a message to yourself. I matter. I am worthy of peace. My energy is valuable. And over time, that message becomes your identity. You stop tolerating what once felt normal. You stop accepting what once felt unavoidable. You stop settling for what once felt familiar because you've raised your standard. And here's the truth most people don't realize. When your boundaries become non-negotiable, your life becomes unrecognizable. Not because everything around you changes instantly, but because you do. You no longer chase, you no longer force, you no longer overextend, you stand firm. And in that firmness, you find your power. So if setting boundaries feels uncomfortable right now, good. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something different. And different is exactly what your life needs. Because the version of you that had no boundaries was always available, always giving, always sacrificing, but never fully at peace. And the version of you that is emerging now is still kind, still empathetic, still understanding, but no longer accessible to everything and everyone. And that is the moment you stop being used and start being respected. Emotional mastery turns you into power, and this is where the transformation becomes undeniable. Because up until now, you've been learning how to see clearly. You've been learning how to protect your energy. You've been learning how to say no without guilt. But here, in this stage, you learn something even deeper. You learn how to control yourself. And that changes everything. There was a time when your emotions felt like they controlled you, when one message could ruin your entire day, when one person's opinion could shake your confidence, when one moment of rejection could make you question your worth. You felt things intensely. And because you felt them so strongly, you reacted just as strongly. You overthought, you over-explained, you overreacted, not because you were weak, but because you hadn't yet learned how to separate what you feel from what you do. And that gap between feeling and action is where power is born. At the Sophia stage, you finally understand that emotions are signals, not commands. Just because you feel anger, it doesn't mean you need to explode. Just because you feel hurt doesn't mean you need to chase closure. Just because you feel fear doesn't mean you need to retreat. You begin to sit with your emotions instead of being driven by them. And at first, it's uncomfortable because now, instead of reacting instantly, you pause. Someone disrespects you, and instead of firing back, you stay calm. Someone ignores you, and instead of chasing, you remain silent. Someone tries to provoke you, and instead of engaging, you observe. And in that silence, in that stillness, you feel something new, control. There's a story of a man who used to lose his temper over the smallest things. A wrong tone, a delayed reply, a disagreement. Anything could trigger him. And every time he reacted, he felt justified in the moment, but regretful afterward. He would damage relationships, create tension, and then try to fix what his emotions had already broken. One day he made a decision. He said, I will not let my first emotion decide my final action. And that simple rule changed his life. The next time he felt anger rise, he didn't react immediately. He stepped back. He waited. He let the emotion pass through him instead of acting from it. And what he realized was powerful. Most reactions are temporary, but their consequences are permanent. So he trained himself. Every time he felt triggered, he paused. Every time he wanted to respond instantly, he delayed. Every time his emotions pushed him forward, he held himself back. And over time, something incredible happened. He became someone who couldn't be easily shaken. That is emotional mastery. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about understanding them without becoming them. At this stage, you no longer give people the power to control your state of mind. Someone ignores you, you don't feel desperate. You feel informed. Someone disrespects you, you don't feel broken. You feel clear. Someone walks away, you don't feel abandoned. You feel aligned. Because now your emotions don't define your reality. Your perspective does. You begin to realize that most people are reactive. They say things in the heat of the moment. They act based on temporary feelings. They make decisions driven by impulse, not intention. But you are different now. You don't move based on how you feel in a moment. You move based on who you've decided to become. And that decision creates discipline. You become intentional with your words, careful with your reactions, strategic with your energy. You stop arguing to win and start choosing when something is even worth your attention. Because here's the truth. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your response. Not every situation deserves your reaction. And once you understand that, your life becomes quieter, not empty, but peaceful. There's a different kind of strength in someone who doesn't need to prove anything, someone who can walk away without explanation, someone who can stay calm in the face of chaos, someone who can feel deeply but act wisely. That kind of person is rare because emotional mastery requires something most people avoid: responsibility. It requires you to stop blaming others for how you feel, to stop using your emotions as excuses, to stop reacting and start choosing. And that's not easy because it means facing yourself. It means admitting that not every reaction you had was justified, that not every emotion needed to be expressed, that sometimes your biggest obstacle was your lack of control. But once you accept that, you gain something far more valuable than comfort. You gain power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to be loud, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else. You walk into situations with a calm confidence. You handle pressure without breaking. You navigate conflict without losing yourself. And people notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. They feel that you're not easily triggered. They feel that you're not desperate for approval. They feel that you're not controlled by external circumstances, and that makes you unpredictable, untouchable, because manipulators rely on reactions. They rely on emotional responses. They rely on your inability to control yourself. But when you master your emotions, you remove their power. You become someone who cannot be easily influenced, easily provoked, or easily shaken. And that is where your true strength lies, not in how loudly you speak, but in how calmly you respond, not in how quickly you react, but in how wisely you choose. So if you're on this journey right now, understand this. Emotional mastery is not something you achieve overnight. It's built in moments. In the moment you choose silence over argument. In the moment you choose patience over impulse. In the moment you choose growth over ego. Each of those moments builds your power. And one day you'll look back and realize the things that once triggered you no longer affect you. The people who once controlled your emotions no longer reach you. The situations that once overwhelmed you no longer move you. And in that realization, you'll see the truth. You didn't lose your emotions. You mastered them, and in doing so, you became someone the world cannot control.